Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pail, steel toe boots.
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure. Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jaylen.
Can I close it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
What's up, everyone? This is Noah Dalzell, and I'm here with Jack Simone, and that was a hell of a game. So I will definitely say, I feel like after the last one we recapped, after Brazil, there was not a whole lot to talk about, and I don't even know where to start, honestly. Might have been one of the best basketball games I've ever watched. I don't know, Jack, initial reactions here. USA defeated Serbia 95-91.
Yeah, I mean, that was awesome. I was sitting here in my chair, like, I was standing up. LeBron had that, like, layup at the end. Curry hit the shot. I was like, yeah. I was sitting here, like, fully just, like, rooting for Team USA, as you do. That was awesome, dude. Curry and LeBron were incredible. Joel Embiid looked great in the game as well. The rest of the team was kind of bad. Like, almost the entire roster was really bad, except for those three guys. KD strung together some okay possessions at the end. He had a big rebound that he stole away from Serbia. Devin Booker hit some big shots as well, but it's just bad other than those three, but it didn't matter because Curry decided to go nuclear and just drop what he had 36 points against Serbia. Is that the record? Did he break Melo's record? Did he tie it, or
he didn't break it? No, Melo was 37, and Curry
close
finished with 36.
Close.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the first thing you have to talk about is what Steph Curry did today, because I feel like, he was 1 point off. Yeah. I feel like what we saw from him was what everybody was waiting to see. Everybody was kind of like, is he washed? Which, again, I feel like we do this all the time where we have such short-term memory on players. Like, he just had a couple of bad weeks, a couple of bad games, honestly, and it wasn't even that many shots. And the second that this game started and he hit his first few shots, like, it was the only reason why USA was even in this one. And they weren't even really in it. But there was a point where the offense just looked terrible. It was painful to watch. I mean, it was worse than it even looked in the early exhibition games as far as just the lack of chemistry. People were passing to where they thought they were going to be and not where they were. And then Steph just kind of bailed them out time and time again. And down the stretch, I mean, there was obviously several players that we'll talk about that were huge in this game. Joel Embiid is one that I think people are going to have to suck it up and just give him his flowers. But that was obviously, I mean, Joel Embiid was instrumental, I think, down the stretch. I don't think they win this one without Joel Embiid, without Steph Curry. Even KD, who wasn't, he wasn't his usual self throughout the game. And he did have kind of a weird rotation in and out.
Bad.
Some
don't say weird. Say bad. It was bad. Steve Kerr had a really bad rotation.
I've been holding back in the rotation. It was so bad.
It was awful. Not only is it bad rotations, it's bad, like, game plan. Like, it's just been bad coaching. It's been embarrassing the way he's coached this team. The only reason they won is because Curry, exactly what Pizza Man said in the comments, Curry bailed them out from embarrassment. LeBron James bailed them out. Joel Embiid bailed them out. Joel Embiid was great on both ends of the floor in this game, right? There were some spurts in the first half where he was getting a little turned around on defense or a couple of weird turnovers, but then second half came around, he was just scoring in the post and doing whatever he wanted. Steph was making every single shot. Devin Booker was making some big shots. KD was all right. LeBron James did LeBron James things. Like, they said it on the broadcast in the second half. They're like, oh my God, different look in his eyes. And I was just like, what does that even mean? And then I was like, oh, that's what it means. He's just going to do whatever the hell he wants now. But the rotations were just bad. Like, they were playing bad defense. They were, like, trying to fight through screens and run around when they clearly weren't capable of doing that. They were putting out 3-guard lineups against a Serbia team who was killing them with threes and on the glass instead of playing long wing defenders who can help them on the glass and close out better. Like, it just made zero sense the way they did the rotations. The fact that Tatum didn't play was embarrassing. It was malpractice. Anthony Edwards was not good in this game. Devin Booker turned it around because of his shot making, but his defense hasn't been good the entire Olympics. KD turned it around at the end. Devin Booker's been fine on defense, but when you're getting killed,
defense apologist, honestly, I think he's a little underrated defensively. I mean, that's the point. It's not the main story here.
I get it. In the general grand scheme of things, yes. Like, he's not like Trae Young, right? He can hold up on that end. But in these Olympics, it just hasn't been like, it's been like whatever. But the point is, when you have somebody who is clearly a better defender than him and Edwards, and for what it's worth, Anthony Edwards is a fine point of attack defender. not good in rotations. He gets lost so easily, and he was losing the ball at the start of the game. The Anthony
He
Edwards
has a
thing
little
was
bit
the
of like
biggest one
early
for me.
Jaylen Brown energy.
Yes,
Like early,
yes.
the kinds of mistakes that Jaylen Brown used to make more.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's a lot to talk about in this game. I think we need to talk about obviously the Jayson Tatum DNP thing is going to be a story because I could not believe just how many NBA players on my Twitter feed were talking about Tatum not playing. Like Miami Heat fans, like all these big fan accounts from different franchises are like, okay, why is Tatum not playing? I don't really get the whole matchup thing. And this is something that I think is a little bit of a bailout for coaches. I mean, how many times this year did we ask a question to Joe Mazzulla and he answered with matchups? And, it doesn't give us any information or really contextualize things, but it just kind of gives the coach an out in these conversations. When Steve Kerr was asked about why Jayson Tatum didn't play earlier in the Olympics against Serbia, he said it was a matchups thing. And so that was obviously front of mind heading into this game because
and then you get outmatched.
And and so the big thing I actually was a little bothered by the Tatum DNP discourse last time around, just because Devin Booker was lights out, Kevin Durant
Booker was on fire,
specifically lights out. Everybody that played that was kind of the people that he was fighting for minutes with was at their best. And today it felt like even though guys were struggling, there was a game plan. And this is Steve Kerr's thing that I know Steph Curry fans have been complaining. I mean, Warrior fans and Curry fans have been complaining for a long time, that it almost feels like he has his preset rotations and he's not really willing to go with the flow and kind of go with, what's going on, otherwise. And that was, John Morant was like blowing up Twitter being like, why is Kevin Durant not playing? Like, I think everybody's going to look at it. There's so much talent on this team that nobody's going to be sitting there being like, this is the perfect rotation, because you can't possibly do that. But it does feel like Steve Kerr is a little bit too calculated as far as like, I'm not going to play, Jayson Tatum in the Serbia matchups. And now you're seeing guys struggle and like, he's still not, he's not willing to adjust that.
My biggest problem, I don't think it was with what's it called? D-Book in general. It was that you had to play Curry in this game because he was on fire, obviously. And so if you're playing Curry, that is already one defensive relative weak point, right? He's not like a bad defender. Like when I'm talking about bad defender, to contextualize it, it is with the context of you have so many elite defenders on this roster that Steph Curry is one of the worst defenders on the roster. That doesn't mean he's necessarily bad. So when you're playing him, but then also playing Book and Edwards in the rotation, Edwards, who's a good point of attack defender, but was struggling a little bit in the rotations, and Book, who is, again, contextualized with the rest of the roster, not one of your strongest defenders. That's not only three guys who probably aren't the best, rotations wise. It's also three guards on a team where you have Bam Adebayo and Jayson. Like, let's even extend this past Tatum. Why wasn't Adebayo on the floor more? You're getting killed on the glass and in rotations, and you're not playing that length. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I get it. And when Devin Booker's hot, and I absolutely understand Devin Booker over Jayson Tatum in the rotation in general, because he's objectively a better shooter, and you need that offense next to your stars.
Right now, especially, it's been really good.
Exactly. But in this game in particular, where you're getting beat on the glass, when you're getting beat in rotations, when you're getting beat and you need the length on the 3-point line, you're just going to stick with it. And it worked out in the end because he got bailed out by Curry and LeBron. But oh my gosh, it was painful to watch the entire game. And I've seen this, and I don't think Tatum will care in the grand scheme of things, but like what are we doing? Like, he is very clearly one of the best players in the world. He's an elite defender. And all I saw on Twitter is, oh, he's been bad this Olympics. He can't find a rhythm. He's been good on defense. He's been one of their best rebounders. And at the end of the day, he's made some, solid connected passes. Why is NBA discourse boiled down to can't score the ball, scoring, aura, bullshit? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's the most disgusting line of discourse I've ever seen.
Well, here's my thing with the whole like Tatum offense struggles piece is there was a number of guys that came into the Olympics and were struggling to adjust to the fact they were playing a wildly different role, or at least even a slightly different role than the role that they were playing on their NBA team. I would say Joel Embiid was one of those guys, and people were like blowing up Twitter, freaking out that Joel Embiid was Steph Curry, another guy, right, who it was so uncharacteristic to watch him game after game struggle with his shot. And I feel like the coaching staff, Joel Embiid did get that one DNP, but generally speaking, the coaching staff continued to basically be like, we're riding with these guys. So it didn't matter that Steph Curry and Joel Embiid were struggling because they were going to be a part of what USA accomplishes here. And say Steve Kerr knew that he needed them for this game in particular, right? And
Yeah.
that paid off because you saw Joel Embiid and Steph Curry were two of the most important games today. I don't think Tatum was in that category of players that they were going to be like, even if he's struggling a little bit, we're going to work through this. He was in that category of like very dispensable. Like, I mean, if you had it going and hit his shots from the beginning, he probably would be in this rotation. But I just don't think he was in that category. And I think that's where maybe Celtics fans are frustrated is people feel like he should have been in that category where he's accomplished enough in his career to warrant being like a non-negotiable player. Other people don't feel that way. I think that's kind of what it comes down to at a point, though.
And for what it's worth, I get him not being in that category on this specific roster. Like you need to give the respect to Curry and LeBron and KD especially to be above that. And when LeBron and KD are in that group of guys that are going to play no matter what, you can see why Tatum falls down to the ranks a bit, right? Because the way he plays is very, offensively dominant. Like he needs the ball in his hands usually because especially when his offense has been off and his shot's been off. But in a game like this where you're so clearly struggling in areas where Tatum could have helped, that's where I don't get it. That's where I don't get the inability to change the rotation. That's where I don't get Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards was the worst one to me. Anthony Edwards was so bad. And then it's not like he just got benched for the entire second half and they still didn't play Tatum. Like he got another chance. He got another look in the game. And everyone on Twitter's like, Anthony Edwards barely played. He only played, what did he end up playing in this game? He only played 13 minutes. Like it doesn't matter that much. Like, but he was bad and adjust. And I get playing a closed rotation in the NBA when the next option is like a Baylor Shireman or Jaden Springer. But if your next option is Jayson Tatum, maybe try it. Maybe try the first team all NBA 3 years or in a row guy, right? Like the inability to be flexible is stupid.
Yeah, and that's one thing. And the Anthony Edwards thing, this was definitely his worst game of the Olympics. I think my frustration with him historically has been, I think that at the international level, and this is less of a criticism of him with Minnesota, but you don't want to ride with him too much because I think he's just very much of an isolation style player, and he doesn't, I don't have the same faith in him that I have in like a Steph Curry to figure it out ultimately. Like he just doesn't have the resume or whatnot. And I thought that last year with FIBA, it was a little bit of a, he wasn't the reason they lost necessarily, but he was one of the reasons why I think that the team overly relied on his offense. At points during this Olympics run, I started getting that same feeling of like there's way too much talent on this roster for the outcome of this game to depend on whether or not Anthony Edwards is feeling it. Like he should be a guy that comes in and maybe hits a few shots, maybe doesn't, but I felt like the team was a little bit too, like whenever he checks in, Anthony Edwards is kind of where the ball is. He's kind of controlling the offense. He's the most heavily featured player. He was the leading scorer on the team heading into this game.
That's crap though, because half of that was garbage time. Half of it was garbage time.
No, I'm not saying that as like a good thing for him.
I know.
Just that kind of describes like how much he's been featured in this offense.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's pretty remarkable how close they came to losing this one. And I do feel like the coaching staff was a little bit bailed out by the sheer amount of talent on this
100%.
roster, because what we saw today was like Steph Curry, KD, and LeBron and Joel Embiid really just showcasing like why they've been the greatest players in the world, and especially particularly those first three.
Edwards being in the rotation over Tatum doesn't make sense, and everyone's gonna say, "Oh, he's scoring." Like, who cares? I don't care. He's not as good of a defender as Tatum. He's not as good of a rebounder as Tatum. And like realistically, when your goal is to put role player type guys around LeBron, Steph, and KD, I'd rather have Tatum than Edwards. Now, Tatum has struggled to adapt to that role, so maybe I get it from that perspective. But if you're looking on paper role player to put next to those guys, having Edwards over him doesn't make sense, especially if the threes aren't falling for either guy, right? So I don't get that. And this team doesn't need a Steve Kerr coach. This team doesn't need a Joe Mazzulla coach. It doesn't need that. It needs a Spo coach. It needs somebody willing to make those in-game adjustments, regardless of the talent. So that doesn't make any sense to me. Steve Kerr doesn't make any sense to me, the way he handles things. And I saw somebody say it earlier in the chat, Tatum will probably start against France because this guy just does whatever the hell he wants. It's so stupid. I wrote something for Houdini right after the game. I said it's embarrassing that Anthony Edwards played over Jayson Tatum. Like it was an embarrassing display of coaching and got bailed out by a legendary Steph Curry performance. How many times can you say that for Steve Kerr?
I wish John was here because I think you guys would be on the.
I don't usually get this fired up either.
No. I mean, I don't really get why he wasn't given more of a chance to find a space in this team. And the reality is, this is what's frustrating, especially being in America right now and in Boston, is that, we're not even really able to see some of the behind the scenes things that normally we can give a perspective on. But I don't really understand, like, if he's how he seemed. I haven't seen a whole lot of reporting on him in particular over these past few weeks. They barely show him on the bench because normally if it was like the NBC broadcast, it would be like the Jayson Tatum camera. So there's a lot that's question mark. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of interviews on this topic moving forward. I'm sure our beat's going to ask Tatum about this in the fall, regardless of what happens in the gold medal game. And I'm sure at one point there will be a deep dive feature article about this topic, on a 6-month reflection. So we'll get a better perspective on this than we have right now. But yeah, it's a pretty remarkable thing that we saw. What we saw today was, this team was down, I think 17 at most. And I don't credit the coaching staff necessarily. Maybe the coaching staff from the sense of like, they kept the guys engaged and positive, and that was the big thing that was emphasized. From a morale standpoint, I think that's important as well. But ultimately, I think this came down to just the sheer talent of this roster just being too much for Serbia to overcome down the stretch, and that's kind of what everybody's been banking on with this team. I think throughout this run is that, like, at the end of the day, even if it's poorly coached, even if the rotations aren't figured out, like, this is the Avengers, right? That's been the story this whole time.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Sam Elias said in the chat, Edwards has been a front runner, or not him. Who was it? Lexus Hall. Somebody. He all of his points. Like, I remember watching the why am I blanking on who they played the game before this? Brazil, when they blew him out. Anthony Edwards led the team or second in the team with like 17 points, and it was like, oh, look at this. 12 of them were when the game was over, like up by 20 points. And I said this on the last Garden Report. I think just because Tatum is now in a place where he plays more passive on the Celtics and waits for the best pass and isn't going to, just ball hog and do whatever he wants, which for what it's worth, people begged him not to do for years when he was that type of player. Everyone's going to praise Anthony Edwards for all the scoring. I just hate that we're at the point in NBA discourse where it's more points equals better player. And MacMan made a point. Anthony Edwards has been better than Tatum this tournament. Like, he just has. Tatum has struggled to adjust to his role, but on paper, and especially what you needed in the Serbia game, there is absolutely no reason Anthony Edwards should have been in the game over Jayson Tatum. It made no sense, and it was stupid coaching.
It was predetermined, and I think that's the knock on Steve Kerr. A lot of times, I think a big qualm of Warrior fans is that when Steph Curry is feeling it, and when he's just hit 3 threes in a row, Steve Kerr takes him out at his usual slot because that's what he does. And I think people think Steph Curry's frustrated by that. It's never been an openly discussed thing. Curry's never called out his coach, but there were even moments today where I was like, I cannot believe he's subbing out Steph right now, and like Steph's like has this going so much. And at the end of the day, like, he played 33 minutes today, so he did play quite a bit, but this is it. This is crunch time. You got one game left after this, so no reason. I don't think there was a reason for, unless Durant can't play more than 24 minutes. I was surprised he wasn't in there more at a point. Let's talk briefly just about the other Celtic performances. Obviously, we did not see Jayson Tatum today. We did see Derek White for 6 minutes and 46 seconds, so it was definitely his least minutes on the court, and we also saw Jrue Holiday. But let's start with Derek White. I thought that he had a couple of unusual mistakes. Like, he had that 3-point play, that 4-point play, and then in the last game there was twice that he fouled at the end of quarters. So I think he has made a couple of like mental lapses that are not necessarily what we're used to seeing from him. Don't think that he had a major impact on this game. What did you think, Jack? Any takeaways just on Derek White's small stint in this one?
I think Jug Artist is the first person I've ever say anything negative about Derek White in my life in the chat, and that's insane. He wasn't good in this game. He was just kind of what's it called? A non-factor. Like, he made a couple mistakes. He didn't play run. Steve Kerr just cut his minutes after he made a couple mistakes. If only he could do that with the rest of the rotation. It is what it is. Like, just not a Derek White game, I guess. You kind of needed somebody to push the pace a little bit more on offense, to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's not really Derek White's style. And with him making those defensive mistakes, you can't really trust him to do the rotations and the closeouts. And maybe you wanted him in a little longer to chase around some of these guards on Team USA, but it is what it is. You kind of needed the balance of the scoring on the other end. So I'm not worried about Derek White. Like, it is what it is. It just really wasn't a Derek White game. And it's kind of same thing for Jrue Holiday. Like, he had some nice assists in this game, but it just felt like a game where they wanted to go to book more. Derek Holiday was definitely better than Derek White, and he played a lot more minutes, but only 2 shots, 7 assists was huge. But yeah.
Yeah, White 7 assists. I honestly didn't realize that Jrue Holiday.
Am I frozen? Chat, hello. Wait, Am I? I can't tell who's frozen. I don't think I'm frozen, chat. I think Noah's frozen. Okay. Okay. I thought I was the frozen one, chat, but it's not me. I'll talk. Yeah, Holiday was fine. I think what Noah was about to say was it didn't really feel like he was dishing out that many assists. It just kind of felt like he was there, which is fine. Sometimes it's not your night, and you kind of needed a bit more scoring aggressiveness in this one because everyone was so cold from the field outside of Steph Curry and LeBron. Again, maybe you want to leave Jrue Holiday in so he can chase around some of those shooters who are getting hot for Serbia, but sometimes it's just not your night, and you kind of needed the potential scoring of Devin Booker, and definitely needed the scoring of Steph Curry. And when Steph Curry is taking up 33 minutes of guard time, you're just not going to have as much room for Jrue Holiday, Derek White combo. Welcome back, Noah.
Sorry. It was actually because I was opening up my ad read, so my computer couldn't handle all of that all at once. Apologies. But thanks for jumping in there. I think what I was gonna say was just that Jrue Holiday, I thought this wasn't one of his more impactful games. Even just looking at the plus minus, +1 for him has been a little out of character. He did have 7 assists. I actually didn't realize that until I was checking out the box score later in the game. But the thing is that Jrue Holiday and Derek White, they weren't necessarily a big factor today. That's a little bit unusual. I think throughout this tournament, they've both been important in making timely plays. Jrue did hit that one corner 3. I felt like that was an important one from a momentum standpoint. I forget exactly how much they were down by in that moment, but that felt significant when he hit it. I don't know. I think, do you have more confidence in this team now, seeing this? They were able to pull this one out, like despite the fact that Serbia played so well. I think that's maybe one component that we should touch on is that Serbia played so well in this game. I think we oftentimes always see things from the lens of the team that we're covering or we're watching for, but the performance that Serbia put together, the guys that were, hitting everything, playing connected, playing aggressive defense, making life difficult for USA. I don't know. Do you feel like you come away with this feeling discouraged about this team or feeling more encouraged?
I think I feel more encouraged. And I think I said this in the last Garden Report too. The only way you're going to beat Team USA is getting red hot and they have a cold night. And outside of Steph and LeBron, if Steph and LeBron even had like good nights instead of great nights, Team USA loses this game by like double digits. So Serbia was red hot. USA was as cold as they can probably be outside of those two guys. And they still found a way to win the game. Embiid was good too. But the point is those guys were on fire. And they still managed to grind out a win. You saw the resilience. You saw the reason that these guys are as good as they are. They outscored Serbia 32-15 in the final period. Like it was just a dominant performance at the end of the game in a time where they desperately needed something to happen. And so I think you walk away from this being a bit more confident because realistically, France is the better team overall, and they've had guys who have been hot all tournament. I watched the game earlier. Cornier has been insane, not missing any shots. Wemby's defensive impact is incredible, and I still think if there was a team in the Olympics who could beat them, it would be Serbia or France. That's what I said going in, even over Canada, realistically, just because of the big man size differential.
Canada's going to beat USA?
I said before the Olympics, I said them over Canada. Come on now. But I would feel more confident after this game for the USA moving forward.
Yeah, I think we do too. Not because I wasn't impressed by what we saw for most of the game, and I do feel like they were bailed out by talent. But the fact that they pulled this one out, like if I'm Serbia, how did you lose this game? Like you had this one. And again, it was just a couple minutes there. It was a couple minutes, and that's what we've seen time and again with this USA team. It's like a normal NBA team is capable of going on a run. Everybody knows a 12-0 run is like this now in basketball, right? But I feel like this USA team, it's like ×2, the way that they can make a run and the way that they can cut a deficit. And it's always punctuated by like a LeBron slam dunk at the end and a Curry 3. Like it's just, once they get it going, it's like you have no chance. And I do feel like Serbia had some chances there. That was a weird play down the stretch where Bogdanovic fouled, like let all the time go off the clock and then fouled.
Yeah, that was dumb.
So they had some opportunities, but I do think like walking away from this game, it does feel like I don't see USA getting beat by France. But again, I think this game was a reminder to a lot of people that have been talking huge about USA and it's impossible to beat them. I heard Draymond Green talking about this on his podcast. He was like, there's a 0% chance USA loses. I think this kind of game is a reminder that it's basketball and literally anything can happen because there are guys that nobody's heard of who were actually worse standouts from the World Cup. I remember some of these players from last year's, silver medal winning Serbia team, but these guys, just look like superstars, and that's what can happen in basketball. It was fun. So you never know. I do think France has had things that have been encouraging for them, and obviously the path that they took to get to the gold medal game has been really impressive in its own right. But let's do some quick ads, and then we can talk more about kind of what to expect for this next game and more. I do think there's some more takeaways here on the Celtics front too.
Yes, I agree. Did you say we're doing ads, or did I miss that?
Yes, I was going to have you go first.
I'll go. Yeah, why not? It's my pleasure. I get to tell you guys about Prize Picks, so I'm very, very happy about it. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. If you know our pregame show, how about them Celtics, then you know Prize Picks. Sam and I used it before every single playoff game to pick, more or less on players. We usually picked more than 0.5 Tatum dunks because it was fun, and we just got to root for Tatum dunking the ball. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do, again, is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become a part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions as well, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have losing lineups on Fridays. Like I mentioned, Sam and I use Prize Picks all season, and we'll continue to do so, even though it's Red Sox instead of Celtics now. But hey, maybe go for a Rafi Devers home run. That'd be a fun one. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Have you been at any Red Sox games this summer?
I haven't been to any yet, but me and my buddies said if they make the playoffs, then we're going to go to plenty, because I'll be in Boston by then, so I'm very excited.
And will you be using Game Time? That's my transition.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Great. Everyone clap it up for that transition, chat. Come on, give her a hand.
Game
Let's go.
Time actually is one of my favorite apps, because before I was a reporter and I had to buy tickets to go to Celtics games, I used to use Game Time every single time. And what I would do is I would go to North Station, I would download the Game Time app, and then I would refresh it, wait for the price to go down, and then I would buy the ticket. So Game Time is the best way to get tickets to any event. You can get last minute deals, you can get flash deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute deals for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, literally any event that you can think of. You can put in your location, see what's around you, and watch the best deals you can find on the Game Time app. It's $20 off if you use code CLNS for your first purchase. Terms apply. So all you have to do is create an account, redeem code CLNS for $20 off, so long as it's your first purchase. I can't do that anymore because I've already used Game Time lots of times in my life. But download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Love that. Love Game Time.
Okay.
Shout out Game Time. We'll be using for the Red Sox games we go to, if they make the playoffs. I don't know if they got that dog.
I thought they were out of the playoffs. I don't follow Red Sox.
They've been all right. They've actually been surprisingly good. Let me look it up. MLB.
I have baseball and football both muted on my Twitter, and NFL and any keyword associated with those two sports. So I live in a world where
why? Wait, why?
Because otherwise I feel like around football season, my entire like Twitter feed becomes all
fair.
Football, and I don't want to see football. I want to see like niche summer league analysis, The
Red Sox are they're 61-52. They're let's see. They are 1.5 games out of the wild card right now. So they got a chance. They're there. They're right there. No problem. I got you.
So let's go back to talking about the Celtics implications here, because I do think there's a whole lot to consider. I was thinking during this game, if they lose this game, are we going to see a Jaylen Brown tweet? Like, what do you think? Do you think we would see
definitely.
Jaylen Brown?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, at one point, I'm almost rooting for Serbia just because I'm just curious to see how this would play
I
out.
would have wanted him to tweet the 3 monocle emojis again, just the same exact tweet that he did when he didn't make the team, just like the eyebrow raise. Yeah, like the same thing. That would have been sick. Well, did you see what Grant Hill said the other day?
Yeah, that he'd still consider him for 2028.
Yeah, at the day after it was revealed that he unfollowed USA Basketball. I can hear my headphones dying, so if they do die, I apologize, but they're chugging along for now. But yeah, like one day after, like on Twitter, it came about that Jaylen Brown unfollowed USA Basketball. Grant's like, yeah, we'll consider him. Like, will he consider you? Like, is he gonna come play for you anymore?
I don't think Jaylen Brown helped his case here with USA basketball. I mean,
Definitely not.
He's been going. I think at the end of the day, you go against an institution the way that he has. Even if you're in the right, like you're not helping your case with that institution. I don't know if you saw Peyton Pritchard did an interview with Evan Turner on the Point Forward podcast, and he talked about a couple of things as it relates to the Olympics. One thing he said was that he is actually hoping to be on the 5-on-5 team eventually. I thought that was interesting because it's like obviously there's a lot of players that are, but because like he had, I guess he had been approached about playing 3-on-3. That was in the, that's something that he mentioned. So for those of you that don't follow the 3-on-3 team, like USA didn't even make the semifinals. They don't have any NBA players or anybody that's even close to an NBA player on their roster. Peyton Pritchard to me is somebody that's like a perfect fit for 3-on-3, but he's been asked about it. He said that he would play on it eventually, maybe, but this time around, his wedding's coming up this weekend and wasn't a good time. But that his ultimate goal is to be on the 5-on-5 team. And the other thing that he said was that he kind of validated this idea that Tatum will be really pissed off about the fact that he got this DNP, which now it's 2 DNPs. I feel like we had talked about this singular DNP for a while now. And so now the conversation pivots from the DNP to Tatum's now been benched for 2 of the 5 games that have been in the actual Olympic play. Is that what it is?
4 games.
4 games?
Half, right? Because they went Serbia, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Serbia. Am I missing a game?
Germany.
Oh, I'm missing a game. They didn't play Germany, did they?
No, that was the West. Yeah, this is where I'm covering the women's and men's. I'm merging all the countries.
Wait, no, Brazil was the quarterfinals. I'm missing a game.
Yeah, there was another pool play game.
Who did they play? Why am I blanking? They killed South Sudan. They played South Sudan. Yes. So 2 of the 5 he's been benched. She's been benched for 40% of their games.
Outright.
Yes.
So, I mean, think about how that's a huge story now. And again, I haven't loved the story in the past, but it is going to be a big takeaway from this summer is that, like, regardless of what happens on Sunday when they play in this upcoming game, Tatum was not who people thought he was going to be in this run. Jaylen Brown obviously spent the summer like largely beefing with Team USA. I think regardless of what Jrue Holiday and Derek White do in this game, I don't think much changes for them. But Peyton Pritchard kind of talked about how going into this game, that this is going to fire Tatum up going into next year and that he's going to prove people wrong because clearly people are still doubting him. He also really stood by Jaylen Brown and said, this has nothing to do with Derek White. We're all boys. Like, Derek White doesn't care about this. So it was from a PR standpoint, Pritchard nailed all of his points, I think. It was a very non-controversial, supportive interview. But what implications do you think this Olympic experience does have for the Celtics? Is there an implication when this is over? Do you come back and you're back to the team you won a championship with and this doesn't really matter? Or are there extra fire to some of those guys that have been in one way or another scorned by Team USA?
I think it'll light a fire under them. I think Joe Mazzulla will make sure it lights a fire to them. I think Joe Mazzulla comes into camp with like a giant USA banner over something, like getting in their heads, messing them with them, being like, "Hey Jaylen, you remember this? Hey Tatum, remember you got benched? Like use that. When you play the Warriors, use that. When we play Grant Hill's Pistons, use that." Like he's gonna do whatever he can to make sure that this fuels the fire. He's gonna use this as like coal to throw in the furnace to help ignite the Celtics because of Team USA. I think Joe Mazzulla makes. I think he'll make sure of that. From like I don't think they'll like overdo it. Like I don't think you'll see Tatum come out and be Kobe with the Celtics anymore. I think they'll harness it in the correct way, which is like the way they won a championship this past year. But I do think we might get some funny. Joe Mazzulla came in with a picture of Steve. Like Joe Mazzulla's gonna like put a picture of Steve Kerr on a dartboard and just have them throw darts at him, or like put like Grant Hill's picture on the backboard until Jaylen Brown makes 100 free throws in a row. So something stupid. Like we're gonna get some silly Joe Mazzulla stories about Team USA that I think will be funny.
I do think we're gonna get something eventually. So it'll be funny to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Brad Stevens' very diplomatic answer about Jaylen Brown being left off Team USA when we were in Vegas. I think you weren't there for that anymore, Jack, but we were basically we basically asked him, Bobby Manning actually asked him, were you surprised? Is this going to fuel him? And he basically was like, Jaylen Brown is good enough to be on any team in the world at any point. And like, he's going to use this to get better. Brad Stevens did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one. He did like the last day right before he left Summer League, he answered a couple of our questions. So I'm sure the organization is going to stand by them, but I do think it's a little weird that what could have been a summer of just like relaxation and celebration turned into a summer of like very mixed press for both of them. A lot of highs and lows. It hasn't been just like let's relish the run and watch highlights of the Celtics winning Banner 18. It's been a lot of like not serious controversy, but some sort of controversy. And on one hand, that's kind of unfortunate because, if like you win a championship, you deserve to just enjoy it and enjoy all the good press and good feelings that come with it. But on the other hand, teams don't usually repeat, right? Like they come back and they chill all summer and they enjoy it and they relish in the celebration of it all, and then they come back and they're usually like a little bit worse than everybody else that spent all summer motivated. So a part of me is like, maybe this weird situation that Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are in is actually going to prevent that like championship hangover that happens sometimes to stars after they lead their team to a championship. I don't know, maybe that's overthinking this whole thing.
No,
but
I think you're so right. I think the Celtics are like the most hated on champion since like the KD Warriors, and it's just because of how boring they were, and they were objectively boring. Like if I was lived in any other market and covered any other team but the Celtics, this season sucked. This season was terrible. Like any other team around the league, like this was like the worst possible outcome because you just knew it was going to happen. There was no surprise. There was no shock. There was no whatever. They were the best team throughout the entire regular season. They played injured teams all throughout the playoffs, and then they dominated a Mavs team that didn't deserve to be in the finals in the first place in the finals. Like it was boring from a national storyline perspective, from a watching fun basketball perspective. This season was terrible. So the fact that there was no like, oh my gosh, Jokic got his first title, the Nuggets won their first ring, or Giannis won his first title, Bucks won their first title in 50 years, or oh my gosh, Steph did it again, he finally won Finals MVP. It didn't feel like there was like a bow on the season. Like there was nothing to wrap it up like in a nice way for the national media, and so they just carried on all of the crap that followed the Celtics all year into the offseason because there was no conclusion. There was no satisfying end. And so they just are continuing all the, I mean, hell, we heard, can Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum be good teammates together after they won? Like, it doesn't make any sense, just the storylines around this team. And I think a big part of it is this season is so boring that people feel like they have to find storylines about the Celtics other than, wow, they're just really good at basketball. And so whenever you find a chance to pick on one of those guys, that it is what it is, because people don't like the Celtics. They don't like how good they were. And I get it. If I was anywhere else, I would not like it either. So people just want to find stuff to talk about because they're so boringly good that there is nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do think that some of it comes down to like, it was a very non-controversial playoff run. And I mean, the 0 game 6s even kind of like summarizes that well. And all the excitement around Jason Kidd's comments about Jaylen Brown being the best player. Like, I feel like the national media, I mean, I remember being in that room when he tried so hard. Said that though, but like there was so much national media in the room and people were like filled with joy. Like there was like something to talk about. I remember everybody was like, thank God that this was said.
Let's go.
And so I do think this Olympic run has had no share of issues. We've talked about this question about, is anybody worried about Tatum shooting, quite a bit on this show. So I don't want to drive it too into the ground because ultimately, like, we don't really know what's going on there. I think there's some mechanical things that appear to be a little bit off, but I personally never really like diving into that because I just feel like his shooting coaches know a lot better than me, that I'm not going to come in and
Drew Hanlon will fix that. Yeah, I'm not.
I mean, it looks weird. It
does look weird the way he like.
Yeah, but a lot of that is just confidence. Like I was thinking about not to bring up. I feel like I bring up my own pick of basketball like once a week on the show, but like I feel like if you're overthinking it and you're not quick catch, shoot, 0 hesitation, your shot looks weird. Like that's when
the last time we played on the same 2v2 team, I had to scream at you to shoot the ball.
I know. I've been in a slump since like January. I'm like, Tatum.
I was like, please, there's 2 people. Let me shoot the ball.
I'm sorry. You had a mismatch. But that's the thing. I think that, with the shooting struggles, it's probably 95% a confidence thing. And maybe it's a little bit mechanical. It's a little bit his legs.
He's in his head.
It's a little bit. Yeah, but to me, it's confidence. And I don't know how confident he feels on this team because, again, why would you feel that confident when you're on the brink of the rotation? One thing that Adam Himmelsbach had in his Globe article a couple weeks ago, because there's been very little quotes from this. It's killing me that I can't watch pressers the way that we normally get access. Like usually we hear from everybody every single day. And so the one thing that was an interesting quote from Tatum a couple of weeks ago was that the experience of being at the end of the bench and getting a DNP was actually what gave him some perspective on what it's like for his Celtics teammates that are out of the rotation, for the O'Shea Brissetts, for the Xavier Tillmans, for the Pritchards and the Sam Hausers. And it's not something that he's ever experienced before. And I do think he's a good leader. Everything we've seen out of this year was the locker room was great and all that. But there was something to me that I was like, this might be a really good thing for him in the long term to have had this lived experience of what it's actually like to have to stay ready and not know when your role is going to come and then still be confident. Like Peyton Pritchard, we see him in like pro-am runs. He's unreal, but it's like, how is he going to feel confident in his shot and not hesitate when he's checking in after 2 DNPs? And we saw at times like that really did impact his shot, and it's human nature. So if nothing else, that's like a silver lining from this Olympic run, is just the fact that he'll have this experience and he'll have this like grown mentality that he didn't previously have.
Yeah, I don't think this will do anything but help Tatum in the long run. I don't think it's going to affect his confidence with the Celtics because he knows his role in the Celtics and he has a great team around him. Like, the Celtics have done a phenomenal job of lifting each other up, building each other up. And I think that'll continue in the next season, regardless of what happens with Team USA. Also, Gary did tweet out a quote after this game from Steve Kerr. He said, "One of the greatest games I've ever been a part of, humbled by being a part of it." And all the replies are, "How much a part of it were you, Steve Kerr? What did you do? Tell me what you did in this game for Team USA." I don't.
Hilarious.
All of the things are just like, they won in spite of you, LOL. Ask why I didn't play JT. It was only close because of his dumb rotations. Homie got a front row seat to watch Steph's whole career. Nothing's changed. But as far as the Tatum thing, like, if anything, I saw this take earlier in the chat, like maybe it's good to give him a little rest because he has been playing basketball consistently. I don't think Tatum's the type of guy who needs or wants a rest, so I don't know. Like, it is what it is. I don't think it's going to affect his confidence or anything moving forward. I think he'll be the same player he was. And if anything, I think he'll be better next season because the weight of a title is off his backs and he's going to be motivated by this as well. But I don't see Team USA or the Tatum situation having any sort of negative impact on him moving forward. I think it'll just be like, all right, let's put it behind me, use it as motivation, if anything, and just move on. Take my gold medal, maybe silver, and run.
So let's wrap it up with just like what are we expecting for it's Saturday, correct? I have to say this covering both the men's and women's is really throwing me off from all the scheduling and team standpoint. But what are we expecting? I mean, I watched France's win earlier today. There was a lot to take away. I mean, Rudy Gobert literally didn't play, so that's fascinating in and of itself.
Yeah.
But never would have guessed that. Nick Batum
Yabusele,
plays,
big body.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it wasn't the NBA players that were the reason why France was able to pull away. Germany, Canada, 2 teams that I thought the USA was going to probably have to get through this tournament, ends up not being the case. Feels a little bit like Celtics playoff run, like these like really hype matchups in my head didn't actually pan out. So now we get Serbia and we get France. But what do you think is kind of the key right now for USA actually coming away with a win? And hopefully in a little bit less dramatic fashion, although actually that was thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah. I think it's just playing the same way. I think trusting that the shots will fall, like giving D-Book the same shots, giving KD the same shots, maybe trying to play a bit more of a free-flowing offense because it does feel like a lot of isolation. And I think the reason they weren't able to dig themselves out of that hole against Serbia sooner was because they just went to way too much isolation. I think it's going to be harder to get to the rim with Victor Wembanyama in the game, so you really need to rely on the shooting and just driving and kicking a little bit more, which maybe Tatum can help with a little bit. I think you need to focus on guarding the drives a bit better. It felt like he sent a lot of pressure to I think Tatum will play more than Rudy in the championship. I'll put my foot down there because Steve Kerr has been it's just a matchup thing against Serbia, guys. Don't worry. It's just because the matchups don't make sense, right? Moron. But
I need a reporter on the ground to get some specifics here. And
what are we doing?
I'm holding myself accountable next year when Joe Mazzulla says matchups as the answer to my question and it doesn't explain anything. I'm going to have to ask a follow-up question because this is such a pet peeve for me at this point where it's like it's just not a real answer. And I get it. You're not gonna point out to us like Tatum's flaws.
What are you gonna say to Joe? What matchups?
I'm gonna say, could you elaborate on that? And
he's gonna say no. No, he's just gonna say no. He's just gonna say no to your face and walk away.
I'm gonna work on it all summer, Jack. I'm gonna work on my follow-up question all summer, and then training camp. Joe Mazzulla's gonna bring up matchups. I specifically remember with Keita and Luke Cornett. I used to ask about that back in the day. I would ask like what made him play Keita one game and then Keita didn't play for 10 games, and he only ever said matchups, nothing more, nothing less. So what kinds of matchups? Talk to me like I'm 5. You know?
No, because then you're gonna get screwed. Because you're gonna be like, "Did you watch the game? What do you think?" And then you're gonna get frozen. You get frozen on the spot.
The matchup. Yeah, he will elaborate on by saying the matchups were not favorable. Well, we'll be back at some point next year when I had my humiliation moment of the year when I asked that follow-up question and
you got to go viral. You're gonna go viral on NBC Sports Boston.
I didn't have any low moments with Joe Mazzulla this year.
Me neither.
So I'm saving it for next year, and I'm saving it for that question in particular.
Yeah, it couldn't be me.
I don't know. Anything else you want to touch on, Jack, before we wrap up here? I feel like we got most of it done. Derek White, Jrue Holiday,
yeah.
not huge factors here. I'm like refreshing my Twitter because I want quotes. I want quotes from Tatum.
I've only seen that one. Yeah.
Tatum. I've only seen that one. I'm like, come on, guys, let's get something.
I bet Gary's saving it for an article. I bet it'll be in an article on the Globe tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
But
yeah, no, I don't think anything else.
Article, like it's the Bible. Like I'm
always
so locked in.
All the quotes.
He's
Need
the
the
only one that
quotes.
has quotes right now.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah, no, I don't think I got anything else though. I don't think it'll affect the Celtics next season. I think it's whack that Anthony Edwards played over Tatum in this game, and I think Jrue and Derek just had off nights, and I think that's fine. But just incredible performance by Steph and LeBron, and that should be the lead. Those two and Embiid, like I said at the start of the show, I was sitting here like pumping him. He's like, "Let's go!" I was like maniacally laughing as Steph Curry was, dude. That start of the game from Steph, we didn't even talk about. That was insane to watch. That when he turned around to the bench, oh my god, that it was incredible. He's one of the best players.
But my dad texted me before the game being like, watch Steph Curry's
yes.
body language. Yeah. And I was like, dude, we didn't even get to see any warm-ups during, like, we didn't even see him on TV. I mean, I had like NBC running all day. We got one glimpse of him and he was like, he's about to go off. And then he did. So he has good basketball instincts. But we'll be back on Saturday after the gold medal game to recap what I think will be a gold medal victory for Team USA. And hopefully we get to see some Jayson Tatum in there. Hopefully Derek White and Jrue Holiday have somewhat more impactful games than they've had, but it's not the end of the world if they don't. I'll also be going deeper into some of my perspectives on this game on my new podcast, You Got Boston. So check that out. I will be recording right after this. That'll be out tomorrow morning. Jack, you want to plug anything before you go?
You can follow me on Twitter at Simone NBA and go watch How About Them Celtics. Go subscribe to us on YouTube. We appreciate it. Videos every day.
It feels like more than every day. Every time I open YouTube, there's like 12 new videos. So if something
you're not checking up every day, then it's every day. You're just not checking every day.
But if something happens in the Celtics world, you will see How About Them Celtics breaking it down. So thanks, Jack, for joining. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week/weekend. Women's basketball all day tomorrow. Very dominant team. We're probably not going to see anything like what we saw today. But if you're interested in that, I'll have some coverage on that for SB Nation. And with that, enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll be back to discuss things after the last Olympic game.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal!
Forfeit's out. I think it's an option. That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.